Hey there, welcome to Gals Get Real, where real women, real stories, and real talk come together. I'm Megan.
I'm Kristen. Between us, we have 9 adult children with 6 daughters. Let's open up the conversations we never had with our moms and flip the script with the kind of connections we want with each other and our daughters.
We're here to laugh, cry, and dive into all the things, from everyday shifts to the curveballs and life pivots, and the messy, magical moments that make us who we are.
Megan, we have a great guest today. We have Hilary May, a licensed therapist who provides mother-daughter relationship coaching. Hilary is the creator of the Mother-Daughter Connection Framework, and she can be found on Instagram at Mother-Daughter Therapist.
Love it. Okay, so thank you so much for joining us today. It's a treat because we have 9 kids between us, 6 daughters. So it will be fun to talk to a mother-daughter coach. So tell me a little bit about how you ended up, because I know you're a licensed therapist. How did you end up in this niche of mother-daughters?
Yeah. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to always talk about mothers and daughters. So, yeah, I've been a licensed therapist for 15 years, and I started out as a family therapist, and I worked with kids and their families. So I would see the kids individually, and I'd see the families together. And so I got really comfortable with that family dynamic and breaking them up and seeing different dyads and different parts of the family. And in doing that work, I realized I had a really nice connection with teen girls. And so I decided I was actually going to my practice is going to be only teen girls, adolescent girls, really ages 12 to 25. And it was when I started doing that work, because the moms would typically come into the room. As you both may know, typically moms are the ones taking kids to therapy. And so it would be moms and daughters that I would see in my office very often. And I started to see this trend of, they're really struggling with each other. And I struggled with my mom as a teen as well. And I thought, what is going on with us? It's not just an adolescent issue, because I had really studied that age to try to understand how I could help with teen girls. But I've never learned anything about the mother-daughter relationship in any kind of training or any of my schooling. And I just started reading any book I could find on the mother-daughter relationship in order to understand what happens to us. Why does it become really hard during the teen years? And so once I started figuring out what pulls us apart and what brings us back together, I decided that's really where my heart is. I'm a mom, I have a daughter, and I am a daughter, and I have 2 sisters. And so there's a lot of mother-daughter relationships in my life. And I really wanted to share what I was learning about what happens to mothers and daughters and why there is a middle ground between being best friends and having a complicated relationship, that we really can have a healthy one if we understand what that looks like.
Right. I think complicated is a good word, right?
It's a great word. And I bet you're a very popular dinner guest at Mother-Daughter.
We just have a couple questions. We need help with
Yes,
this.
exactly.
Yes. And yeah, I fall into that role easily too. And I'll definitely give unsolicited advice whenever I can.
We'll take it.
We will completely take it. That leads me to, in your practice with mothers and daughters, what do you see as the most common struggles between mothers and daughters today?
I think typically what I hear them say is, we can't communicate with each other. That is, she's not understanding me. And the other one's saying she's not understanding me. And typically it's because no one's actually listening. Everybody's sort of fighting to feel heard, to prove their point, to share their feelings. Because that's sort of what we do as females, is we talk about how we feel and we want somebody else to listen. But what tends to come up is a lot of defensiveness, a lot of explaining around why this was my intention in this argument. I really didn't mean to hurt your feelings. This is what I meant. But when we explain things away, when we defend ourselves, it doesn't really help the other person feel heard. So then we're left feeling unheard.
If somebody's getting defensive, then the other person's getting sort of annoyed or irritated, and then they're getting defensive. And I feel like in those moments when you're sort of arguing or disagreeing, it's hard to find that common ground, right? It's always good
Yeah.
to take a
You
break
start to go
and
down your own lane or into your own black hole. So how do you
Yeah.
get back out? How do you take that breath and take those emotions down just to say, hey, stop, I'm going to listen. You want to be,
Yeah.
I want to listen.
Yeah. So, well, we started talking about teen girls, but it really is any age. I do believe that mothers lead the relationship always, even when they have an adult daughter, that they're the ones sort of setting the tone and giving space to have these conversations. And so what I've learned is the role of a mother is to listen with the goal of understanding. And when you enter the conversation in that way, it's easier to not defend yourself. It's easier not to turn it back on what your perspective was, that you start to listen with, I really want to understand how she feels. I really want to understand. And that really is it. You just want to understand how she feels. You don't need all the facts. She comes home from school and is sharing about situation with other girls or kids at school, and she's talking to you about it. Our intention might be, I want to help her through this, or I want to explain why she misunderstood it or why she's responding emotionally. And really, all she wants is to talk about it, to express how she feels, to have a safe place to share it, and to feel understood and heard, because probably in that situation, she didn't. She feels alone in how she feels. She feels confused about what happened. And as moms, we might be really quick to solve it if it doesn't have anything to do with us. If it is an issue with us, we might be quick to defend our intention and what we really meant. And both of those responses don't help her feel heard and understood.
And I suppose it's easy to assume that you might already know the feelings because we've raised these girls all the way along. But at some point, right, they're privy to their own experiences, friends, especially in today's world. I mean, we want to talk to you about the generational differences also. But I guess just for me, I'll pick on myself here, but just I jump quickly to that chess game of one step ahead. Oh, I think I know what you're going to say. And I already have the response for you. And just
Mm-hmm.
don't do that, right?
Right. Because you've already stopped listening when you're forming your response, right? You're no longer present with her. You're thinking about what you can say to her, how you could solve the problem,
right.
how she got it wrong.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Now,
Well, and I think it's interesting too, because I can speak for myself. I have 5 children. So there was always a lot of sort of chaos and busyness, and you're taking one here and you're taking one there. And I'm sure that my kids at moments were stressed and upset or feeling that I wasn't listening, that I wasn't present. And that is sort of one of those things that it's time sensitive in a way because there was so much going on. But I can definitely relate to that and sort of just feeling as though, come on, come on. Like, I don't know, just sort of that feeling that I thought I knew what they were saying, but then in the craziness and the chaos, I probably didn't make them feel heard. And if I could go back, it would be like, okay, look, things are really crazy and chaotic right now, but can I talk to you after dinner? Can we go upstairs? Can I
Mm-hmm.
really listen to you and focus on you? Because I don't know that I did that so much when they were growing up necessarily.
Right. It might be survival mode and trying to put out fires and, this one needs that and that one needs that. And we also have, as mothers, a lot of wisdom. We've lived a whole generation of life longer than she has. And so we want to share that. We can see it as a life lesson. We want to teach her, how she can handle this in the future. But really what daughters need is to feel heard. And that's it. I tell moms all the time, you're actually doing less than I'm asking you to do less than you're probably already doing, right? You don't actually have to solve the problem unless that's something she wants.
it really does sound easier as long as you have the discipline to just listen.
Just listen.
Right. Right.
That's what it boils down to.
That's it. And you mentioned, obviously, you've been a daughter and you are also a mother to a young girl. I feel that in today's world, we have this perception, perhaps, that we are listening more than maybe our mothers did to us. So I want to understand if there's a generational difference. Do we see any generational misunderstandings happening based on the way we were raised and the way we're raising these young women?
Yes, absolutely. There are generational differences with daughters today. And what I notice, and my daughter is 11 and I'm 44, and she has much more of a voice than I did. And I'd like to think that that is part of my doing, is that I've encouraged her to talk about how she feels, express herself, speak up for herself. But I do just also think it's part of the younger generations. And even myself, I think I have more of a voice than my mom did. And so as we evolve and our daughters become more emotionally aware, I think that they settle for a lot less. I work with a lot of daughters who are around my age in their 30s and 40s. And so their moms are in their 60s or 70s. And the differences in the emotional awareness, emotional maturity is really obvious. And it probably will be said for me and my daughter in the future as well.
And the reason why this is important, Hilary, is because while almost simultaneously, you know this almost surely better than we do, as we're going through our own transitions at this phase of our life, so too are they, right? I mean,
Mhm.
we're watching them completely transition from childhood to young adulthood. But we're also on the flip side going through similar big shakeups too. So it's
Right.
interesting to, and I think that I'm saying this off
You
the
should
record
be
too.
you should be saying some of this though, because it's good.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, it's
Yep.
okay if we switch gears because I can go back to the generational piece as well.
I mean,
But
because
I want to know what you, yeah, go ahead.
it's almost like, because females, we all want to be heard. How do you advise that daughter who is a young adult but still wants to be heard for everything she's going through? But then you have the mom who's like, well, hold up, pick me in the back
Right.
row. I'm going through things too. And I know
Yeah.
the mom's job is to probably be the more mature one, or
We should
even,
talk about this.
we just want this to be a nice back and forth and everybody to
Totally.
feel heard. Like, I don't want my kids to be like, mom, this isn't about you. But then again, it is an exchange in some ways.
Hmm.
Well, and
If
in a
it's about your relationship, it is. If it's about the two of you, then it is a back and forth. But I do believe daughters need to feel heard first, because once they feel heard, I can see it in sessions. They visibly soften, like their shoulders go down, they relax, they feel like, okay, now I'm ready for whatever is coming next. And then you get to share how you feel.
That is great.
Right. But you're also showing them this is how you listen to how someone feels, right? You then confirm, here's what I heard you say you feel, and give them an opportunity to say, yeah, you're right, or no, you're wrong. And here's what I've said, or maybe let me explain it in a different way. But once she feels completely heard, then you can share what you need to that's appropriate and is part of that conversation. If you want to get into like, well, here's why my life is hard, and here's why this thing happened and whatever was going on. That's not helpful. That is better to be saved for your partner, for your friends, for your mom, right? But if it has to do with your daughter and a conflict you had and what was going on for you in that moment and why you missed it or why you hurt her unintentionally, then you can share that. But what you asked originally is a dynamic that gets in the way for mothers and daughters, because when mothers don't have the emotional support that they need, what do they have to give to their daughters? They're pouring from empty, right? So it's so important that as women, we have the emotional support that we need so we're not leaning on our daughters. So when mothers and daughters talk about being best friends, typically that means the relationship is going both ways, right? That daughters are also giving their moms advice, or moms are sharing about, can you believe Tracy and what she did at this party the other night? Like, that's not helping your relationship with each other, even with an adult daughter, right? So you want to talk about what's happening in your daughter's life. You want to share about what's happening in your life, but you don't want to lean on your daughter for emotional support, no matter how old she is.
So I completely agree with you in terms of not being best friends. There's a line there. But I also think what you said was very interesting about we need to have our cup full, or it also can be looking at where you came from. I mean, I can speak for myself that there was an element of emotional immaturity that I experienced. And therefore, I think at times that was more perhaps my behavior pattern. And obviously, as I've aged and as I've put some time into trying to figure out relationships and my responses to things, I do feel as though the relationships with my kids in general, but especially with my girls, is stronger because I think there was an element of defensiveness, all the things that you're talking about. And so you need to have a full cup to be able to do that. But you also need to maybe cut yourself a little bit of slack depending on where you came from and sort of the baggage, I guess, if you want to call it, in terms of your own maybe emotional weaknesses. Is that fair to?
Yeah, it's so important, like you said, the work that you did, so important that you identify what those weaknesses are. Like that's such a big part of my work is the generational impact and the patterns within your family. And I specifically look at how the women in the family were treated and their experience in life. So we would look at, I've done my own pattern work, and it's my daughter, me, my mom, her mom. So it's the women in your maternal line. And you look at their lives and were they emotionally supported? Did they have a partner who would come home at the end of the day and say, "How are you? Is there anything I can do for you?" Right? Or that they can lean on them when they were having a hard time, and that they could be vulnerable and they could share about what was going on and the support they needed. In those generations, that typically didn't really happen. They didn't make a lot of room and time to talk about feelings and work through those things, right? And so we're starting to learn that now, and our kids are requiring that from us.
Oh, yeah.
And
They definitely require it.
Yes.
Some more than
Yes.
others. Some more than others.
Right, right. And when I say my daughter is more vocal than I was, I mean, she will call me out. And as hard as it is to hear, I talk about it being the mirror, like she's holding up the mirror to me and showing me what she sees. And I can feel uncomfortable with that and think, okay, that's not what I want her to feel or see. Right. And so what do I need to do about that? And it's so important that we take responsibility for our responses, for how we're behaving in our relationships, and that we make those shifts, because otherwise, who's going to want to be in a relationship with us, right? And we're also modeling to them, to our daughters, how you do take responsibility in your relationships rather than shutting down or silencing yourself or creating distance or cutting people off, right? Or this is how you show up. You ask for what you need in this relationship, and then you make a decision from there about, can that person give it to me? How am I going to negotiate this relationship? And that can all start in her relationship with you.
Right, which is a pretty powerful thing when you break it down
So powerful.
for the rest of her life.
I mean, for the rest of her life. And the fact that in today's world, especially so much access to friendships, other social connections, information. And so why not start that at home? And that, I mean, it's such a beautiful relationship, mother-daughter, if we treat it with the respect.
I know. It's one of the most special relationships out
It
there,
really
really.
is. And
I know.
I agree.
I'm like getting emotional.
I'm getting emotional too.
I feel so lucky. I have 3 daughters.
I
It's
feel
a
so
special
lucky.
relationship.
And also, like, you have just so many little nuggets here. Just simple that when you hear them from Hilary.
Well, I wish I had spoken to you about this when I had 3 younger daughters, because the simplicity, but you need to have the curiosity and you need to want to solve a problem. And when you're ready or you're available or you have someone like you do realize that it's pretty basic. They want to be heard because ultimately they want a good relationship with you just as much as you want a good relationship with them.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really the bottom line, which makes it simple and special and all the things. So I think that could really help people out there that are sort of struggling a bit with their daughters.
I would agree. And I'm guessing that we shouldn't confuse them wanting to be heard with demanding that they communicate with them, right? I mean, it's because it's like, okay, here's my time. I'm listening to you. But there are probably times when it's just like any relationship, it's time to give space, right? And let them go off and have their privacy and not force feed that conversation.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, what you said is it's so much easier to prevent this breakdown than it is to fix it, to heal it, to repair it, to go backwards. And I mentioned before that I would see that breakdown. It was it was happening in most of my clients when they were adolescents because that work wasn't put in before they got to that age. And so at that age, they're so tempted by many other things, friendships, right? They're trying to find answers, they're trying to navigate it, but they didn't have this emotional safety in the relationship with their mom before they entered those years. So their mom wasn't the person that they could turn to and feel like, I'll get the support that I need, that I can trust her, she'll keep it to herself, that I can trust her, that she'll understand me, that she'll know I had the best of intentions, but I'm facing this problem and I need support. Or they see that their mom is so overwhelmed with her own life and what's going on that the daughter doesn't want to burden her mom with more, right? So doing that work before they become a teenager is really important. Unfortunately, what I found is that most moms weren't motivated until there was a problem. So that's why I've ended up helping mothers with adult daughters, because then looking backwards, it's like, oh, I can see exactly how this happened now that I'm starting to pull it apart. And what do I do now? Which we can, of course, repair it. Because, like you said, I think daughters always want to have a healthy relationship with their mom. It's whether or not they trust that their mom can do that, can meet them halfway, can be that person they can feel emotionally safe with. So you can certainly learn this before she becomes an adolescent, and it could be smooth from there because you've already got that framework to communicate with each other and understand each other. But then you could also look backwards and start to heal it and start to develop that within yourself for your daughter.
Wow. Amazing.
No, that is amazing.
Yeah.
And like I said, I think that the simplicity and the sort of beauty in terms of how you can almost like prevent some of this is really great information. Okay, so do you want
Yes. So I did actually have a question. We recently did a podcast with a pairing of our daughters, and we talked more about birth order. And it so happened that that interview was done with our youngest, our babies of the family. But
they were so adorable and great, by the way, and open and
yes,
emotional, and it was awesome.
it was awesome.
Aw.
Please take a listen if you would. But I guess my question in reverse to that is there any extra consideration to be put for the firstborn daughter of a family if there are multiple daughters? Does that lend itself to any special considerations, whether good, bad, or indifferent? Because they're the first one there alongside mom, and then there are perhaps, in our cases anyway, other siblings that follow.
Mhm.
Is there any special consideration there?
There is. And I'm curious if you already knew that before you asked that question or based on your experience.
I mean, I think
Might have had a suspicion. Plus, we're both firstborns in our
we're
family.
both firstborn.
Ah, okay.
Yes, and I think it's fair to say that both of our firstborns are amazing and wonderful.
Or maybe they felt more of the some
Pressures.
yeah, or burdens of the rest of the family. I'm not really sure. I mean, I'll speak from my own experience. I know as firstborn, I certainly in some way took that on, whether that was handed to me or not, or pulled away from me. I have no idea, but that's my impression anyway.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. The eldest daughter struggles the most. She does feel the most pressure. So you could feel that for yourselves and then also for your daughters. Absolutely. The eldest daughter typically feels the most responsible for her mom's emotions, making sure that her mom's okay. When I was saying before about that daughter who would say, you know, my mom can't handle anything else. She's so stressed or she's so anxious or she's got her hands full with my brother. So I'm going to just take care of this myself, you know, or I'm going to lean on somebody else. So that creates that emotional distance because that daughter is really raised almost as like a right hand support for the mom. And that goes back generations where the eldest daughter would be the one, she would like raise the siblings, right? She'd be the one to take care of the younger siblings, but also be the most supportive of her mom if it was tasks around the house. But what I see as the most damaging is the emotional burden because that eldest daughter doesn't let that go when she leaves the house. She still feels that. I happen to be the middle daughter, so it's not anything I feel personally. But when I started learning about this, I said to my older sister, do you feel that? And she said, oh, yeah, my whole life. I had no idea. I had no idea. So if you have an older sister, thank her for the responsibility that she has held for your parents and specifically your mom, because
No.
I typically see mostly mothers and eldest daughters.
it's
Oh,
so
that's
funny.
actually
I have to share
fascinating.
because my sister will be listening. My middle sister has recently thanked me.
Oh, that's
Hmm.
so
She
nice.
has really all along. But I think there was some sort of Instagram going around that would talked about how much the oldest daughter does. And she kept sending
Mhm.
me those and saying, if I haven't said it already, how do we make sure that the firstborn daughters in our families know how much we recognize that and appreciate.
Yeah.
How do we
I think naming it for them, if you haven't, I'm just naming it. And then also asking them what you can do to lessen the burden for them, because they really do take it on like it's their duty. If I don't do this, no one else will. But that's not true, right? Somebody else will. The parents will. Like, there's an account on Instagram called the Eldest Daughter Club, and I've connected with the woman who runs it. And one of the things that she's talked about is how she always plans the family vacation. If you don't do that, someone else will, right? So it's about really taking steps to lessen their responsibility. And also, if you're raising daughters, like an eldest daughter, to make sure that she knows she's not in a parenting role. She doesn't have to correct things. She doesn't have to make sure everybody's okay. One of my friends actually told me recently that she has her son and daughter feeling responsible for each other. Like the younger brother, who's 3 years younger, you watch out for your sister too. And they're little. And I thought, how special is that? Because it is so natural for that eldest daughter then to feel responsible for her brother her whole life, make sure he's okay, right? Because that's what you're told. Like, make sure he eats, make sure he does his homework, whatever it is. So also making sure that you talk to your sons about how they can be responsible for other people in the family or what is getting done. Because that is another dynamic. If it's okay, I'll move into that.
please do?
We tend to parent our sons and daughters differently. We parent our daughters to prepare them for life. So we protect them. We want to keep them safe. We want to keep them out of harm's way. We also want to teach them how to be prepared for different situations where they might be in danger or unsafe, or have to really work hard to get a promotion or a job that they want. And with our sons, we really let them explore life and have this experience. And it's okay. You can get messy and dirty and you can get hurt and you'll be okay. We really tend to protect our daughters. And so what happens is daughters notice this and they start to feel like you prefer him, you favor him, you let him do more than me. And they start to feel like that's about them, and something like you believe they're not capable of doing that for themselves, but it's really this gender role. And that becomes something that comes into my conversations with mothers and adult daughters about how you were much easier on my brother, you preferred him, his life was easier. He's also probably maybe not as successful or responsible as the daughter is. So it's something to think about, really paying attention to how we parent our daughters differently.
You're mentioning the boys of the family really is a good segue to what we had as one of our upcoming questions, which is, we wanted to ask you about, from when we were growing up, some of the biggest shifts we've seen, which we sort of alluded to some of those, but has there been any shift in that relationship also in the way boys are perceived within the family and the way that affects daughters? Or has that been something that's been kind of tried and true through the years?
Or has it progressed a little bit from when we were young, that it's a little bit more sort of even, not quite as exact? I would have thought that, X amount of years ago, it would have been more exaggerated. And I guess I'm hopeful that it's sort of
Mm-hmm.
come together a little bit, but maybe not.
It's still something that I see. So I'm not sure. I'm not
Right.
sure that
Right.
it's really changed.
Interesting.
Maybe if I see it in 10 or 15 years, but it's still something, because I work with daughters who are in college, and it's still a dynamic.
Still a prevalent thing.
Interesting.
Mhm.
One more question for you. Are mothers and daughters actually closer now because of more communication, or are they more at odds because sort of everything's on the table, so to speak? I mean, I know that I have conversations with my daughters that I never would have had with my mom, just on lots of different topics. So, what are your thoughts on that? Is it healthy and good that we're talking about all these things? Can it sometimes be a little bit too much communication and create sort of issues?
It can definitely be too much, but I would say overall, it's great that we're talking to our daughters more, because we're more accessible to them to ask these questions, whether it's about bodies or boys or money or whatever it is. I do think that we're more comfortable having those conversations, so then they can seek us out. And what we really want them to have is emotional safety with us. So if they feel like they can come to us and ask these difficult questions and not feel embarrassed or shamed or put down for asking the question. I think that's great.
I interrupt, but I think that's one of the biggest pluses for our generation, or the way our relationships with our daughters versus potentially our relationships, depending on how that relationship was with your mom. Because there's things that I don't love about sort of this place and time in terms of technology and other things. But I do think that open communication is just a tremendous gift and such a wonderful part of mother-daughter and other relationships, really having those conversations.
It is. And so the only thing I would say to be careful about is how much you're sharing with them, right? That they can come to us and have all these conversations and talk about sex and periods and all the things that maybe were uncomfortable for us to talk about. But we want to make sure that we still have a boundary for ourselves and that we're sharing our lives with the right people, and that with our daughter, it's really about her and our connection and protecting that.
Boy, that's such a great point. Thank you for bringing that up again. I think that is a real
No,
nugget to
it's
hold on
huge.
to.
It's huge. I think that the oversharing of the parent is probably more detrimental than you even realize, or than
Yeah.
realizes if they're oversharing,
Well,
so to speak.
100%. Because in a lot of cases, we wish we had that kind of open communication with our own moms, and you might have it
Mhm.
later in life. So you're excited to have that many more years of that type of communication with our daughters, but we don't want to get too excited, share too much.
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah. Because we really don't want our daughters to feel emotionally responsible for us, right? We really want to be pouring into them so then they have what they need to give to the next generation, right? And that we're getting what we need from the appropriate people for us. And you can still have a close relationship. You can still have a lot of fun together. You can still have those conversations, right? But you just keeping that boundary of what's appropriate and not appropriate from your end.
Right. Well, it kind of goes back to, ultimately, you can be best friends in the sense that as they grow up, you can be very close, but you're not friends. There is that mother-daughter relationship always, and that can be even better than a best friend on some levels, but it does have to be treated that way. It's, I'm not your best friend that's going to be telling you every little single detail
No,
of
that
my life, and yet we can be super open and really close. So I do think that's a very, very important point.
and I would like to point out, because I think it's relevant, and certainly I've had a little bit of trauma in my life. I'm sure there are listeners who have had some traumatic things happen. I'm guessing we have to be all the more careful if there's a divorce involved or some other sort of major
Mhm.
transition, because that's the time when it's even more important to reach out for your peer support or your professional help.
And not to overshare, in those
Right.
situations too, because that can create, right, a
A
divide
whole a
and a
whole
whole
host
nother
of other
situation.
another set of fallout, I can only imagine.
Right. Because in a shared trauma, let's say it's a divorce or the loss of someone in the family, it can easily, you can very easily share about your own feelings in that moment. Right. But remembering as the parent, that's not the right place to do that. That your daughter needs you to be there for her and to be able to help with her feelings, not your feelings.
Yeah, and my kids also say, my girls sometimes, and my boys, I guess, will say it too, that when you get yourself so worked up about certain things, maybe I'm talking about something that's upsetting me and they're listening, and maybe it's something that I shouldn't be talking about, or whatever it is, a lot of times they'll look at me and they'll just say, Mom, it's not that deep. And then those are moments where I'm like, wow, you're teaching me something. It's kind of
That's
like,
right.
relax, it's not that deep. So I find as they get older, I've learned a lot, in fact, from my kids in terms of how to handle situations. And I feel like
Hmm.
that is a tremendous gift. And to your
Hmm.
point, like, I'm listening to them and I'm thinking, you're so right. It's just not that deep.
And
And
that's exactly what I was saying about the mirror when they hold that mirror up to you. And so you can see what you're doing, how you're responding, right? And so in that moment, they're saying, it's not that big of a deal. You can
that
let it go, right?
we
And so,
say, put the mirror away, please.
yeah.
Give me my moment. Just give me my moment.
I'll have my mirror up with my friends.
Exactly. We'll put it down right now. I
So,
have one more question.
oh,
I don't
yes.
know if we've kind of maybe already touched upon this, but I just thought it was a good question. What do you think is at the heart of a healthy mother-daughter relationship? no matter what the age or stage?
That's hard because there's a few ingredients, but I'm going to say something different than I said before because typically I would say listening, but I think it's acceptance for who the other person is, especially your daughter. Because again, it starts with the mom to the daughter. Accepting your daughter for who she is so important for her to feel like who I am is enough, is okay. I don't have to change. I don't have to fit into expectations there are on girls and women, right? I don't have to have a certain kind of partner, choose a certain kind of future, live in a certain place.
That's literally going to make me
That's
cry.
beautiful.
That is
That's
beautiful.
beautiful.
And I think you hit the nail on the head. Acceptance and making them feel loved and making them feel like they can do anything and you're there to back them up and you're there to
Mhm,
is a pretty amazing thing.
mhm. And
Wow.
Oh,
hard,
me,
and hard,
me
but
with that
important.
one. Yeah.
Yeah. And almost makes you go back into your past and hug the little version
Oh
of
my
yourself.
gosh.
Yeah, right.
They accept you, right?
Mhm.
Well, this has been
Awesome and
amazing.
amazing and
And
so insightful.
we so appreciate having you here. We always like to kind of close with a question for our guests and for you. We would like to ask you, you sort of answered it just now, but is it the same piece of advice you would give your younger self as a daughter? If you could give yourself just one piece of advice, what would that be?
Oh, you may make me cry. I think like you're good enough the way you are. You don't have to change. Yeah.
We know that there are literally a million podcasts out there, and so many of them are so, so good. We'd love for you to tell your friends, daughters, and all the women in your life to tune in, get real, and share all the things.
Yes, share your stories with us by DMing and following us on Instagram at Gals Get Real Pod. And please subscribe, like, and share wherever you get your podcasts.
Until next time, lots of love.
This podcast is part of the Sound Advice FM network. Sound Advice FM, women's voices amplified.